Hello and welcome to GeekVerse Sidequest, your weekly stop for video game news, reviews, and more here on the GeekVerse Podcast Network. I'm your host, the tournament organizer, Dylan Musson. Today I have with me, after a couple-month hiatus here, the slug shot, Dante, Den Acolyte. How are you doing today, my friend? It's been a couple months, but I'm glad to have you back.
I'm doing good. No, thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure. What's up, Internet? I don't know. Excited to talk about video games, man.
Yeah, today that's all we're talking about. Some video games. Mainly we're going to be reviewing Rollerdrome, which came out, I think, a couple weeks ago at this point. And then we'll just kind of talk about some other things you've been playing the last couple months as well. But yeah, let's get a couple of the plugs out of the way. Make sure to check out that Geekverse Patreon. You can get the 10th episode Out of Mana right now, nice and early up there. That's a fun one. And I think even this episode will be up a few days early, whereas it's normally dropping on the feeds Tuesday. But you could listen to this, 4 or 5 days earlier? That's pretty crazy stuff.
Let's
so
go.
check that out. All that social media good stuff. You can follow Dante at Den Acolyte, myself at Dylan Muss. Make sure to leave a review. That stuff helps us out a lot. Thank you to Amanda, who does the music for the show, and Taylor, who does all those beautiful thumbnails. And yeah, everything else on the feed, lots going on right now. We're reviewing She-Hulk. We got all those newscasts. You're a Lord of the Rings guy. I don't know if we've ever talked about this, Dante. No?
No. Yeah, I'm not a big fantasy guy in general. I like my
Is it
sci-fi.
that you've seen them and not into it, or are you just not even interested to check them out?
No, I've seen them.
Okay. They just don't do much for you.
Not my bag. I feel like I'm
totally
putting myself in like a spider's web saying anything negative about it. So I'm just like, it's okay. It's not for me.
We'll leave it at that. But yeah, Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, the TV show, will be out, I guess, later this week by the time people are listening to this. So we'll be reviewing that. And that's pretty much it for the plugs. But yeah, Dante, it's been a couple months. So I kind of want to talk about just maybe a couple of your highlights. You were just mentioning Xenoblade before starting to this. So talk to me about Xenoblade because, okay, actually, I want to quickly explain something. So my birthday's in July, and I don't know where this came from, but Nintendo sent me an email, and they're like, okay, happy birthday, it's my gamer tag. Happy birthday, Rapatika. Here's a 15% off coupon you can use on anything on the eShop.
That's
like,
huge,
damn,
honestly,
that's
for
pretty
them.
generous. I don't know if you have to hit. You probably have to have spent like $1,000 or something, then they do it. So
Sure.
it's probably why I got it now. But I'm like, okay, what should I do with this? Like, this is a lot of power. I have to decide before the end of the month. I'm like, should I go get Xenoblade? Should I get the pre-order of Pokemon? Get that off? Should I get Splatoon 3? That's kind of my 3 that I'm deciding between.
Right.
So I don't know. Is Xenoblade the one? I know you haven't played the other two. Obviously, they're not out yet. But should I go for Xenoblade?
I didn't play 3 yet. So I can't give you an answer.
Oh, you've been playing a different Xenoblade.
I've been playing the first and second ones.
Okay.
So yeah, and I had this whole thing where I was like, I think you asked me, you're like, hey, are you into Xenoblade? Are you excited about that? And I was like, man, I bounce off of those games every single time. And I don't know, we had a little lull. I was like, all right, maybe it's this Xenoblade 3 is getting some pretty fire reviews. I want to look into it.
Yeah.
And I was like, but I'm going to plow my way through the first 2. And I beat 1.
Nice.
That game's, I cannot believe I pushed it away for so long. It's
good.
Excellent.
Yeah,
it's
nice.
Absolutely like up there in some of my favorite JRPGs ever, I'd say. Like,
wow,
really,
cool.
really excellent. I understand why it had so much pull from like such a, like, I don't know, small audience really, really loves that game. So it makes sense to me now. And I've been playing 2, and I really like 2 as well, outside of the copious amounts of fan service in that game. There's too much. There's way too much. It's like, oh wow, I love enjoying this like very engaging story, and then but cuts to boobs and butt every 5 seconds that I'm like, maybe don't do
and
that.
then your like sword is like sexualized, right?
Essentially, no, because like your sword is kind of attached to that person. And it's gross on occasion.
I've heard that's something that Xenoblade 3 has kind of done better by.
Yeah,
so
they walked it back a lot, it sounds like. But even with that, ignoring that part, Xenoblade 2 also seemingly excellent. I think I like the 1 a lot more, but 2's a little bit more, a little less serious at times. They try and kind of split the difference.
Are you going to get to 3 this year, or is that like, I know Xenoblade? I know those are long games. So
I'm on a tear, dude. No, I literally just beat 1, which took me about 70 hours, and I'm already like 50 hours into the 2.
Oh, hell yeah.
So
I love that.
no,
That's awesome.
we're plowing right through, man. I love a good JRPG. That's like I don't know. I'm a sucker for it. So.
And a couple of weeks ago, me and you talked just kind of preparation for Game of the Year stuff, and I think both of our most anticipated game was Midnight Suns. That's gone now, so now you have you have more space on the calendar. You've got another 50 to 70 hours worth of game into this. So Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is a good way to fill that in, right?
Oh, absolutely. No, I think I'll be done with that before, like, I don't know. I was gonna say Labor Day, but that's kind of crazy. Definitely sooner than later. I'll have room for like God of War and stuff. It won't be a problem sneaking that one in.
Well, I know you haven't played 3 yet, but what do you think about that proposition, though? I have those 3 Nintendo games. I don't know where I want to go. I played the first Splatoon, really liked it, but I don't think I got invested in it long term. Never played 2. Pokemon, I don't know. It's like a guilty pleasure thing. Like I think those games usually aren't great, but they're kind of fun to jump around in. Splash around in. And then Xenoblade Chronicles 3, like I haven't played the other ones, but I heard that 3 you can kind of just jump right in. But I'm also, as you know, very scared of games with very long play times. It's like, am I gonna put 100 hours into this? So
it's one of those. I think if you can get down with like I don't know, there's a couple of things, and there's a reason that I ended up deciding to go through them. They are kind of like independent titles, but there is a universe. Right, like you have a better understanding of the world at large if you played the previous ones. So, I'm already realizing that in 2, and apparently like 3 has a good bit of that. Okay, so that's why I was like, oh man, I really want to plow through 1. I would just say play 1. but if you want to get into one that has like all the nice bells and whistles, especially because they just did the definitive version of 1 like last year or something like that. But if you want something with all the bells and whistles, and definitely seems like they've made gigantic like quality of life improvements over the first 2, like 3 seems really, really good. I've watched a good bit of videos on it so far, and like it seems like they're splitting the difference between everything that was good about 1 and 2. Nice. And it seems pretty damn serious. Seems like there's some mech stuff happening. So like, I think it's gonna be pretty dope. So I think 3 would be cool. I'm not a big Splatoon person. Like I think it's really fun. But like actually like a blast, especially for a new Nintendo IP or newer Nintendo IP. But I don't think those games keep me invested because they are multiplayer, or they're so focused on being multiplayer.
And I don't think I know anyone personally who's picking it up either. So I could play some online with people on Discord and various servers, but I don't know if it would hit the same as like some other multiplayer experiences playing with friends.
Totally.
So Cult of the Lamb. So we did a review for this last week. I've been playing a lot more of it, and I'm really enjoying it still. I think it's great. I think maybe one thing is I feel like I've hit near the end of the progression loop for a few of the, I guess a few of the lines you could say.
Yeah.
And so I just have a bunch of dungeons to go through to like actually see that ending now. So I don't know if I'm gonna love that of just like doing a bunch of combat and kind of skipping the town building stuff, because I feel like I've almost maxed that part of it out. So I don't know where you're at in the game, but have you experienced
much earlier
something like that? Okay.
That sounds good to me though. I love Binding of Isaac. Like that's one of my favorite games of all time. Like top 10, I'd say. And it just saying, hey, like turn off the Stardew / Animal Crossing brain and just poke some shit for a while. That sounds good. I like to. I feel like just knowing now that like I can't brute force it anymore sounds like actually a nice, like an enjoyable thing. Whereas like, earlier you're like, oh well, I can like progress my way through this. Like I can like level up these parts or get more cards or level up like my magic more, or the sword more, so I get better drops. Like that sort of stuff is fun from a progression standpoint, but like at the end of the day, I want to have everything available to me and just like do the skill-based stuff. So I don't know. That sounds okay. I'm about like, I'd say like if the skill tree is the way, or I've beaten 2 bosses, right? 2 of the major bosses, and there's 4, right?
I think 4. I think there's a 5th. Like I don't know if it's a full dungeon thing or if it's just like a boss fight. I haven't gotten there yet, obviously, but there's at least 5 doors that you're looking at.
That's what it is. So it's 2 on each side and then the one in the middle. I'm really enjoying that game. I'm just taking it kind of slow. Like I said, I've been kind of for some reason in serious JRPG mode and putting all my hours into that.
I just find it so hard to play that game slow, man. Like I just get sucked into the loop, and there's never a good time to save and exit. It's always like,
Mhm.
okay, I'll just stay one more day, make sure I get that sermon in. Then it's like, okay, I'll just do one thing. Like I'll just go do one
It
combat encounter while I'm waiting, and then like I've been sitting for another hour playing it somehow. So
Any game that puts you
yeah,
in just one more brain is definitely
yeah.
one that's going to be like, oh shit, it's been like 3 hours. How did that happen?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I get in that too, for
Yeah,
sure.
so yeah, I'm at a point now where it's like there is no real reason for me to do a sermon anymore. Like it just
Mhm.
I can't progress that tree anymore. So I guess if
Right.
my faith is getting low, I could go in there just
Yeah,
to do
that,
a
I was
little
going to suggest that.
a
I was like, that's
buff.
the only
Yeah,
reason.
so yeah, I like the combat too. I just don't think it's nowhere close to Binding of Isaac in terms of fun variety or enemy types or just like even the feel for me. But yeah, I will not have to grind it nearly as much as you do in Isaac to get certain items or characters
Yeah,
and things like
sometimes you
that.
just got to
So
wait for a perfect run. You're just bashing your head up against the wall until you're like, oh, now I can fight
yeah, a lot more consistency in
the
every
devil or
dungeon encounter in
whatever
Cult of Lamb.
fight you're going for.
Mm-hmm. What else? Any other games you played like in the summer that really stand out to you?
Destiny got a big update, so I hopped into Destiny for a little bit,
Cool.
just to poke around, see what kind of that's about. So did Path of Exile. I always kind of dip
Mm.
my toe back into those every time they do like a major update, like Destiny less than Path of Exile. I try to hop into that one for at least like a couple hours a season,
Mm-hmm.
and see if I feel like doing the new. I forget what they call them, but they essentially have a new mechanic every season.
Right.
Um,
Cool.
and then yeah, Destiny had just did a thing where this week, I think tomorrow's the end of it. It was all the DLC or all the expansions were free. So free to play game, and then you get to play all the expansions for free too because they have a new one coming out. I was like,
Okay.
oh, this is a good time to kind of just like see what I've missed because I think I skipped the last expansion entirely. So
Mm-hmm.
been poking into that as well. But like I said, lots and lots of Xenoblade.
Yeah.
It's kind of been the main thing.
No, I mean 70 hours in one game, 50 in another. That'll
Yeah,
take up the gaming
yeah.
calendar for a month or two. That makes
Oh,
sense.
easily.
Okay, cool. Let's take our first ad break here, and then we'll come right back and get into Rollerdrome. Okay, we are back. Rollerdrome's the latest indie hit, you could say, developed by Roll7, published by Private Visions on PC, PS4, and PS5. There is there's a demo you can get if you have PlayStation Plus of some tier. I don't know one of them, so you can check it out that way. And yeah, I'm playing on PS4. I'm curious where you're at, just in terms of I know you do a lot of PC stuff.
Yep,
Uh,
PC.
so
You
are you
got it.
playing with mouse and
First
keyboard, or
try.
do you have a controller?
No, I'm using a controller. I have an Elite controller.
Okay.
It's
Yeah, I was gonna
the
say
main reason I play games on PC is because that controller is
yeah,
just, like,
I felt like
amazing.
this game could be kind of weird with a mouse and keyboard, so I just wanted to check on
I
that.
actually was hoping for it initially, just because I don't know, shooting and moving. But
Yeah,
now that I've played it on controller for a prolonged period of time, that's definitely the preferred way.
right. Probably for the movement and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I think this game's kind of confusing. I watched a lot of the trailers and stuff, and I could never really get a grasp on exactly what it is. But it's one
Mhm.
of those games that I felt pretty strongly that I wanted to just buy it and find out what it's about. And then
Yeah.
I
Hope for the
heard
best.
yeah, good impressions and things. So I picked it up. And the way I would describe it, I don't really know how they're describing it in their marketing stuff, but I think it's kind of a cross between Tony Hawk and Doom, but with the art style of Sable. So that
Yeah.
might sound like a lot, and I don't think it's derivative of those necessarily, but it's you can
One of
feel
those.
you can see all those like the parts of it kind of all working there in a way, and that it's very fast paced movement, a lot of like combos, very like arena based combat, that kind of thing. And yeah, I guess the way it's framed is that you are competing. You're a rookie in this new sport called Rollerdrome, which is this very kind of controversial and dangerous sport. And you're working your way through a tournament to get to the end. And that's how it's like each level is like, okay, here's the quarterfinal round, semis, finals, and then I guess the finals might be the last one, whatever it is, a certain amount of levels just to get to the end. I actually just beat the game. You know, we delayed
Oh,
our
nice.
podcast recording a bit, so I finished that final level, and then it kind of unlocks a new game plus, so to speak. So there's recontextualizing of the previous levels and things like that, and there's also tons of challenges. So I'm going to go back and do more, but I at least made it through all the levels once now. So where are you at with the game, just in terms
You're
of
gonna be
progress?
I feel like I'm bashing my head up against it a little bit. I've beaten the mall like 5 times and am
Okay.
getting like starting to get a little frustrated and not making much progress.
Wait, but by
So
beating them all, you mean like
making it to the next. So the way that the progression works is there's 4 levels per like world, essentially. I don't
sure,
know.
yeah,
Yeah,
zone,
and
yeah.
so yeah, for each zone, and to make it through, you have to complete a certain amount of tasks or objectives in each world to make it to the next zone, or in each independent level. So one of the first 4 levels, you'll have to beat like 15 different objectives to make it to the second group of
Yeah, I'd say it's maybe about
levels.
like half of the challenges that you have access to, you kind of have to clear before you can move on. Something
Yeah,
like that. I
essentially.
remember.
Yeah. That I think that would be a safe bet, because like I am getting to a point now where I have like 9 challenges here, 4 challenges here, 7 challenges here, 4 challenges here, and I need like 6 more. I need to
Right.
complete 6 more to make it to the next like level, or the next group of levels. And I am definitely I've gotten to a point where I've gotten 4 out of 15, I think,
Okay.
on the mall, and I'm just doing them all over and over again and like not succeeding. I feel like I'm just like, I don't know if I'm exceptionally bad at it, or if I think it might be. It's probably that. It's
Yeah.
probably
So it sounds like you're maybe falling off a bit in terms of the
yeah.
entertainment value because of that.
Yeah, so like I'd say, I don't know. I actually think there's like a lot of really really cool stuff about that game. But I think the one thing I was not necessarily expecting was that kind of those barriers, right? Like these walls of like, hey, you need to repeat this level until you get all of the objectives done, or get enough of the objectives done before you can proceed. And I don't know. I feel like it's kind of asking a lot of you. It's like maybe making you kind of lean into its repetition a little too much, when it's a game that does have, what is it, 4 times 4? It has 12 levels total.
Yeah, and then
Maybe
like a
more.
final level, I guess, on top of
Yeah.
that.
So it's 12 levels, and I feel like I'm just stuck doing the first 4 over and over and over again, which leaves me feeling, I don't know, maybe a little frustrated at the end of them.
Yeah.
I'm just like, God damn it, I didn't get through them again. It doesn't have a way of allowing you to kind of like pin your objectives on the screen at all times. So like I the way that you kind of keep up with those is if you're like, all right, I know I'm supposed to be doing something on this, you pause it, you look through your objectives, and then you unpause. And I feel like maybe I'd get like through the like halfway through the level and be like, oh, you know, I'm like a little bit closer to completing this one. So you're pausing again, you're checking through your list again. When I feel like I could just wish I could almost like in an RPG, like select my objectives and then just have those on the screen at all times, and then
especially where it's like, okay, do
how
this
close I'm getting to
specific
it.
grind in this specific place, and it's like, okay, which grind was it again?
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
It gets very specific in what it's asking for. So it'll be like dodge a bat guy 3 times, or it'll be like do a specific grind, or collect all of the like. When you were saying it's not super derivative of those, the one game that I think it is super derivative of is Tony Hawk, because it will be like collect all the tapes, essentially. Like it'll be like
definitely
this thing in the world. But and to make progress, it feels like you have to clear quite a few of the objectives, which is, it's very old school in its approach, which I don't say is necessarily a bad thing, as long as you know it's a nod to those like really old extreme sports games.
Yeah, it's so interesting that I feel like we've had a very different experience with this game, where I don't know if it's just a play style thing, but I have not once been like blocked out of the next level. I've never had to stop and go back to a level. I've done a couple of it recreationally, but it's not because I needed to, and it wasn't like that helped me progress further on. Like I just have kind of progressed through each level linearly, and I don't know if it's a playstyle thing, because I feel like when I get into every level, I try and knock off the easy ones. I go hit all those combo tokens. I do the trick shot thing. If there's a do this grind and kill an enemy, like it's a pretty easy one. I'll do those easy ones, and then a couple will fall into my lap. Oh, I accidentally got this perfect timing dodge into shotgun, and that apparently got me one. So maybe I've gotten lucky in that way too. But yeah, it's weird because I have not had that issue at all.
It sounds like you were going in with the objective of completing the objectives. Whereas I feel like that game gets tough enough early on that it is more like, for me, it was just more so like, I want to complete the level, right? Like I feel like that is difficult enough, especially as you get later on in the game, that maybe these objectives are just like, maybe adding too much of a skill ceiling to it for me. Whereas I think like, I don't know, most extreme sports games, I feel like just plowing through the level, you might only have to do it like 1 or 2 more times, and the stuff that they're asking of you is not necessarily that difficult, but just like making sure that you're dodging all of the attacks and beating the level with full health, because it isn't just riding around like there's enemies in the zone that are actively trying to kill you. They get pretty ruthless after a while.
Yeah, I guess for me, my trajectory with the game was this, where I felt like the first maybe hour or so was a bit slow, just because there's a lot of the way the tutorial is implemented in there. And it's like you'll complete a couple of levels, then it's like, okay, you got to go through this other training regimen thing, and all those are fine. But I just felt like it was maybe a bit heavy-handed in some of it. And then I feel like there was a couple hours I was playing where I was getting it, I was progressing. But I just wasn't loving it. Like there was nothing, I couldn't point to like, oh, there's this issue why I'm not loving it. It just wasn't hitting. But then there was a couple levels where I was just getting rocked. I messaged you about this yesterday.
Yeah,
I'm
you
like,
did.
Man, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to beat this game, because there was one level that I was on my 10th, 12th, 15th attempt. I'm like, I'm never gonna beat this. But then it was doing that level over and over again. And I was like, man, I fucking love this game all of a sudden. There's something about like getting a point in the level where like, okay, after I kill the third wave of enemies, I know there's going to be a sniper guy that spawns directly on the spot. So I'm going to make sure that when I kill that guy, I'm going to be right there so I can quickly take him out so he doesn't mess with me. Getting the combos down, finding like good places to go when I need just a bit of a breather, or planning my route out in different ways. Or like, okay, I can leave that guy because he's not going to do much to me for most of like the enemies that I know are going to spawn. And so I think for some levels, like that familiarity makes them super enjoyable once you're getting that repetition down, even if it is very difficult. But in other levels, you just beat it in one try, so you won't really get the nuance of like, okay, each enemy is really placed in a very precise way from the designers, but since you're not playing enough of it, you don't necessarily experience that. And then I felt like when I got on that groove of like, okay, I'm in the flow state now of this game. I totally understand it. I feel like I'm moving very well. I'm good enough getting my combos, getting my ammo and stuff like that. And then I felt like I had a couple more levels, and then the game was just kind of over. I had got to the end, and there is, like I said, this New Game Plus thing, which incentivizes you to do different stuff. But I guess I'm feeling like maybe it was a bit too short of an experience. But once again, like that could just be a difficulty thing, and maybe I got lucky a couple times too. So it's weird because there was one level that was super, super hard, but it wasn't even the last level. Last level I did on my second try. It wasn't too bad. So it is a bit inconsistent at times, but I think I found by the end I really loved that gameplay loop. I just don't know if there's, when we compare it to Doom, it's like there's not as many weapon types as Doom. There's not as many enemy types as Doom, something like that. So it's more tightly designed in that way, and I think it totally works. And now I will go back. I want to do more challenges and stuff. I don't know if I'll go through the whole thing again on the harder difficulty. I might just go back through the main game and complete some of those objectives, some of the fun ones. Because some of them are cool, like beat this whole level with a shotgun. Like that's a fun limitation that I like, and I think the game does a good job of switching that up. So you're trying out different play styles, and even a lot of the challenges like teach you certain techniques just by like, okay, how do I get this challenge? I guess I have to try this very specific thing. And you're like, oh, that's actually a great idea. I should be using that all the time when I fight this enemy type. It's a really good counter to like their attack and stuff like that. So I think there's some brilliance there. Just it takes a bit to uncover it.
Yeah, no, I really do think it has some like obvious depth. And when you are in that kind of like flow state it wants you to be in, the game feels fantastic. I think you're just so often not in that flow state that it feels like this. I don't know if like, I want to explain it like Sonic almost. Okay. Like, you know how like when that game has momentum, those games are fun. And when you are constantly bumping into shit, it's not fun anymore.
Yep.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel about this. It's like, it's whenever I am like nailing like all of my tricks and I'm like killing stuff in the middle of the air and I'm doing flips and shit, it feels really cool and super original. But I just feel like anytime you get hit, you get stopped. Anytime like you bump into something silly, you get stopped. You know what I mean? And I just want to be flowing throughout consistently. And it has this kind of like stiffness when it's not going super well, but when it is going super well, it feels like it has a really good flow to it. So it's kind of this. Yeah. I feel like they maybe just need a way to up the momentum quickly again for you. But I don't know. That's kind of dependent on where you are, because it is broken out like a Tony Hawk's map. That like if you are in a spot where a jump's kind of far away or a grind's kind of far away, you are going to have to haul ass across, have 0 bullets because you get your bullets done back by tricks. and like just kind of have to wait to be able to like bring up the momentum a little bit, because I feel like there's a lot of situations where I would have just run out of ammo, not have something I could quickly get tricks to do. So I would just like bunny hop and then do a quick grab, bunny hop and do a quick grab. And it feels kind of silly, just so I could kill something really quickly. So it's also like, I think maybe I have, this game came out in a little bit of an unfortunate year, because it is something that is so much about like having creative movement while also killing enemies in the world. And I think Neon White is like one of the best games to ever do that, like ever. Like that game is easily one of my favorite games of the year, and definitely made for me. But this doesn't have that same level of like, I don't know, variation, or but I'm still early. Like you make it sound like, I guess maybe it doesn't vary itself up a whole lot.
Yeah,
the levels probably do, because I like even in those first 4 levels, there's some like, I don't know, there's like an outside snow level, and then there's like, like I said, there's the mall that I've felt stuck on for ages, and then there's like a desert level, and like I feel like that's gonna mix up quite a bit, and the art style alone is like pretty enough to look at that all these levels are probably
we'll talk about that in a bit, but I think there's a good amount of variety in the locations. I'm glad I have you here, because I totally disagree on the element of momentum. I just feel like you can't bail in this game, and like sometimes if you bonk into a wall, you lose your momentum that way. But even if you're in like a precarious corner, and as long as you hit that grind button, like you'll instantly on a dime, like 90-degree angle turn, and keep that momentum. So I think once again, that is something that as I got better at the game, I could keep it moving better. But like I find once I'm moving, I very rarely am stopped. Like even if I'm getting attacked, like it's not preventing me from continuing to move. And maybe the only thing is like falling off the map kind of kills your momentum, which can happen on a few stages, but even that I don't think is too bad. So I wonder if that's something that you'll like, as you play the game more, you'll get more used to it or something like that. But that's not something I've really can say that I've encountered a whole lot in terms of
I was
losing
say,
my momentum.
I've put a good like, it's gonna be a sign of like how I think terrible I am at this game, which is weird, because I feel like previous games I haven't, like I put a good like 6 hours into this, and could not get past the first 4 levels.
Interesting. I feel like I don't have too many hours than that getting to the end, so it's interesting. That's a different experience. I guess for me too is like just using like the combos and tricks are, I'd say, much simpler than Tony Hawk, and you don't have to be as accurate. Like I love in this game, if you, no matter where you land, you'll always stick the landing. And I love if you land backwards, your character like is skating backwards for a bit and then does like the spin around. I think that's very stylish and cool. But I just like, even on the ground level, if you have any sort of momentum whatsoever, even just the basic speed, you can still like jump and do a flip and a trick, and you'll get like at least half your ammo back. So if you have any speed, any ramp, any grind, like you can get that ammo back completely. I guess for people who haven't played the game, that's how you refresh your ammo, is by doing tricks, which is a fun thing that really works well for me. And I found it like pretty, like I mean, there is a lot of times where I do run out of ammo, but I think even if you're not near a ramp or a rail or something, you can still get like a decent amount back. Just
you have to
on the ground.
I was going to say, like, I feel like I couldn't often successfully like get a backflip off on the ground, but I would, like, you do get like 2 shots back on your pistol or 3 shots back on your pistol if you do a trick and then do like a body varial, or do like a 180 or 360. Doing like the flat ground backflips I wasn't very good at.
At the level you're at, which weapons do you have? You have the shotgun and the pistol. Do you have the
grenade launcher and then the grenade launcher
too.
Which like that's one that's definitely susceptible to like running out of ammo, because you only get 2 shots with it. There are enemies that like it took me a little bit to realize what it was asking me for. I felt like they were kind of frustrating, honestly. The like rocket launcher guys, when you shoot them, if you don't continue to shoot them, they put up a barrier and you have to wait. So I'd end up just being like, okay, fuck this guy, and then I'll go handle somebody else and then come back. But if you use the pistols and you just dump on them, you have to essentially do like 1 attack combo fully.
I think you need like at least 80% of the max ammo to be able to kill them in one go too.
Like the shotgun, I feel like regardless if you do 2 of the slug shot hits, which is if you time your shotgun, there's like a line that like two lines that line up, and once they line up, you do like max damage on them. You still need 2 slug shot kills to kill one of those, but it puts up the shield after the first one.
Yeah.
So like it seemed like I was kind of stuck using the pistol. It was like, okay, if I'm fighting you guys, then I need to switch to the pistol so I can use an entire clip on you and you won't refresh your shield. Which I thought was like it was frustrating at first, but I was like, oh, that's cool nuance. Like now that I understand this character or understand this enemy type, I know that I need to switch to this weapon and I'll have an easier time taking those guys out. Whereas I can use the shotgun for the like weaker enemies and one shot them, or for like the barrels that are on the map that will like explode those enemies. Like it seems like each gun has much more of a use case than I expected initially. I thought it was just going to be like, oh yeah, use the gun that you like, or switch it up every once in a while. I do wish that all the guns had their own ammo, though. They all use the same ammo. So like, I don't know, I have like first person shooter brain or shooter brain in general, where like something which I would shoot something and then I would switch guns and then I would be like, oh shit, this doesn't work either.
Right.
Yeah, like most first person shooters or third person shooters, like that's second nature at this point. So that was a little interesting.
That's interesting. I think I like having them all as one. It works well for me. I will say the fourth weapon you get is very strong and helps with those enemies in particular. But yeah, I like that. I think the balance of enemy types, like there's not too many of them, works really well. And just like that, especially like each stage will have different quantities of them and stuff, and really just like asking you, okay, where do you want to prioritize? Who do you want to take out first? I think is a really fun question to answer, as like maybe this one guy isn't as big of a deal, but like where he's standing is very inconvenient. The enemies don't move. They kind of just stand in their one zone. So they're not going to be moving around, and you know, you can't really kite them in this game. It's not really a thing. But usually, you know, I'd like to prioritize the long range guys. The snipers, they're just annoying as hell. You got to take them out first, and they're like very squishy, obviously. And then there's kind of the blue laser guys. I don't know if you've seen those guys yet.
I haven't seen those yet. Great.
Yeah, they do an interesting thing where instead of like putting a shield up, they essentially teleport somewhere else. But there is a bit of a time before they teleport, so you can still hit them a few times, like with multiple different weapons potentially, but you have to be really quick, and that's a really fun challenge as well, to get your like timing right of shooting a grenade and then like timing it as you get the shotgun, you know, shot at the exact same time, stuff like that. So I think the combination of enemies like works really well, and yeah, like the variety is not to the level of a Doom, for example, but it's like it's so perfectly tuned in terms of the balance for me that it works. It works really well, so I gotta commend them on that. Plus, it does have the Doomy kind of thing too, where to heal in this game, each enemy drops like a health when you kill them. Each of them do. The tougher the enemy they are, the more health
they drop. Little pips. Yeah, little.
Yeah, exactly. So you got to cruise by them in order to get it. So once again, that's a fun thing too, of like, okay, how do I want to plan my quote unquote line, my Tony Hawk line, so that I really need to get some health right now. I got to cruise to this enemy, or sometimes I like to leave the easy like bat enemies that are really no struggle ever, but sometimes I like to leave them on the map. That way I have a source of health at some point if I want them. Plus, I don't know exactly how the enemy respawning works. It seems to be like when a certain percentage of the current wave is defeated is when the next one will spawn.
Populate new ones, yeah.
So sometimes I like to leave those easy guys, like those nothing guys, till the very end, because then it kind of delays the spawn. But then sometimes it's like, okay, I want to kill them all really quick because I want to get that next wave spawned right away.
That's like
like that.
Like I have like 2 quality of life wishes for that game, and one of them was the like, okay, let me be able to like pin my objectives, so I don't, so I can just like see them and constantly work towards those. The other one is knowing how many enemies are left, because that's how the level ends. Is once you've killed the last enemy, the level's over. I feel like I would have plowed through a lot more of these if I wasn't. I don't know. Some dog brain part of me just like kill everything. Just kill them all, and then I can start worrying about other stuff. And I think that's also kind of why I'm failing miserably at this. And if I could just see, hey, you have 2 enemies left, you have 3 enemies left, you have 1 enemy left, I would focus on the objectives over the enemy. But I'm just trying not to die the whole time.
Yeah.
So I end up kind of feeling rushed to kill everything, when actually, if I just leave it down to 1 or 2 enemies, I could take my time and like complete all of these objectives in one run, outside of the like finish in this certain time period. Because like even then you could like probably you'd probably lose your multiplier. There's a multiplier as well.
Yeah.
I was gonna say like you could probably even just like grind tricks for 30 minutes until you actually like finish some of the score challenges. But then I was like, oh, you'd probably lose your multiplier over time, so it would be even more difficult.
Yeah, multiplier goes up by I mean, both shooting enemies and then also like getting that final kill kind of gives you a big puts you up to the next number. But then shooting them like at least brings up the timer, I guess. That
right.
It down.
It's like Devil May Cry almost. It feels like the longer you're like maintaining a combo, the higher you're closer you are to that like SSS rank. But instead, it's like just a number.
Yeah, I think an enemy counter isn't a bad idea at all. I feel like generally, just based on like, okay, how many red lines are pointed at me? That's how many snipers on level. Since the levels are small enough, even the later game ones like are usually small enough that you can see most of the map. If you're like, I guess if you're in the corner looking out, so you're not at all times necessarily, but you can get a general vibe, and if rockets are flying at you every 10 seconds. There's probably a couple of those guys out there. Stuff like
it's
that.
less to know who's on the map at the time, but know like how many respawns are coming. That way I know like
you have no idea how many waves are going to be. Each level changes it up too. It's not consistent. So that's
sometimes I kill the last guy and I'm like, oh shit, it's done. Like I thought there was going to be another like 30 dudes that popped up like along the way. So yeah, just knowing like having an idea of when the level is ending, I think would have like, I don't know, helped my patience a little bit. Because like I said, I was just like, all right, fucking murder now. That's kind of like my like I said, I just went into like, I don't know, one track mind when it just came to like survival.
I want to talk a little bit about the visuals. So last year, both me and you praised Sable, and this has the very much the same sort of art style.
It's like sketchy cell shaded thing.
Yeah, exactly. And even like a similar color palette. There's a couple of desert levels in this game that look very Sable-esque.
Absolutely.
One thing I do have to criticize though is just some of the clarity of lines in this game. I feel like is a lot worse than that game, for example. Just the details of environments. It just doesn't look as clean, and particularly for me is the text. I also agree. I think it'd be great if you could put the challenges up on screen, but I mean I'm playing on kind of an old TV, so maybe they just didn't calibrate it to older TVs, lower settings or something like that on a PS4 as well. So maybe it's that, but it's fucking hard to read that text.
No.
I maximize the size, but there's just like straight up letters are just missing, like L's and I's will just sometimes like literally not be on my screen at all. Like
that's gnarly.
I
did not have that issue.
Yeah, it makes it kind of wacky. So that's too bad. Once again, not sure if that's like PS4 quality thing. My old ass TV. My eyesight's not too bad, so I know that I think it's something with the game. But even just in general, like the environments, to me, like this game doesn't look half as good as Sable, even though. Like at a screenshot, you're like, oh, they look the exact same, but no, it's just the clarity of lines and details for me isn't up there. So
it's more flat in general. Like I'd say, like you are kind of working with these like mini ramps and stuff like that, and there's not a lot of opportunity for them to add like texture and
that's
kind
fair.
of like create I don't know, more of a just an interesting environment. Like the levels are cool. But like
the color palettes, still,
that like those almost like pastels they're using, I'd say like work really well. A lot of like earth tones.
Your character really pops with the red.
Oh, totally. So do the enemies. They all have these kind of like almost neon on them as well. They almost look like construction workers or something.
Sure, yeah.
But yeah, I have to agree. Like I think Sable had much more like of a stark look to it, and I think that also has to do with kind of the way that game is shot. It's very specific in the like 24 frames per second thing, and like a lot more like each independent thing I think has more of those like just sketchy kind of thin lines, those thin cell shaded lines than these do, where it's like, I don't know if you had to like relate the lines to polygons, it feels like this is more 16 and that's like more 32-bit or something like that. It's just there's just a little bump in quality that I think goes a really, really long way with that game.
Yeah, for sure.
Sable specifically.
Yeah. I like the music in here. I don't know if it's going to be best music category by the time the end of the year rolls around, but I think
on synthwave,
it's
right?
pretty solid. Yeah. And that's one thing cool too with the New Game Plus mode is it's like remixes of all the tracks.
That's really cool.
So I've only played one of those levels yet, so I can't speak on that too much so far, but it's the same theme, but there's some different layers to it. So I think that's a fun thing that New Game Plus, like I can't think of another New Game Plus that has that, like remixes of all the tracks. That's pretty neat. So I think this game is smaller in scope and it's able to do that. Yeah, you're right. Celeste as well. One of the best video game soundtracks
It's
of all time.
super good. Yeah, no, like I liked the music. It wasn't in your face. I feel like considering how like visceral and violent that game can kind of feel,
Yeah,
they could have went a little more. It could have. I would have preferred Doom music
sure.
than this like just vibe. It was like, all
Yeah.
right, like I don't know. It definitely seems like it's made to just like chill out too, but then the gameplay is absolutely not that. So maybe a little bit of a disconnect, but I think it helps with the I don't know. It adds to the visual style well, but not maybe the gameplay style as well.
Yep. And I kind of want to bring this up, though I don't know if there's too much to say, but this game is, as I mentioned, it kind of has that tournament structure. And in between some of the levels, you'll go into this first-person perspective, and you're kind of walking around the locker room, and there's things you can interact with, you can read, you can see who your opponents are in each round. I'm guessing you've only, seen a couple of these at this point.
Seen it one time.
Yeah,
I'm a big
so
Half-Life dork though, so I love a nice locker room to start in. Like,
yeah,
I don't know.
it's fun to contextualize some stuff.
Yeah.
I think there's maybe like 4 or 5 of those sequences in the game, so not a ton. I
one per group of levels.
Yeah, I think so. I got to say, I feel like this is maybe the weakest part of the game, and I also think it's the least important part of the game. So it doesn't really matter if the story is weak because it's really all about the gameplay. But I feel like it was trying some stuff, and it just didn't really succeed at it. Like it's setting up this world, which is very classic. Like bad corporation is running this event, but I feel like it never really goes beyond that. And there's a big attempt, I felt like, or I shouldn't say big, but there is an attempt to add personality to characters in the game, whether that's a couple of the opponents that you might be facing, whether that's like a villain kind of character, whether that's a character that you're sympathetic towards who's like rooting for you, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so
beef in the locker room, right? Like let me beef in the locker room. Don't let me just like poke around with stuff.
Yeah, that's the weird thing for me is like you never interact with these characters, which once again, you don't need to, but it's like they tried somewhat, so now I expect them to like, okay, if you're going to go down this path, at least try a little bit harder, and I feel like that was something that kind of failed. And I mean, I love the look of your character in this game, but like there's absolutely zero personality to your character, which, you know, I don't need someone who's quipping like, oh, I got him with a slug shot. Like I don't, to be clear, I do not want that, but it's too bad because I love the structure of it. Like I'd love if a roguelike did this, where the format is that you're going through a tournament round through round. This is not a roguelike, to be clear, but the idea of like, okay, who are the other competitors? They have like their strengths and weaknesses, but you're never at any point like fighting these people directly. It's just like you're in the same round, and I guess the idea is that either your opponents all died and that's why you moved on, or you got a better score than they did. But it never feels like, oh man, I bested like Alfredo, who's I've been like really struggling to beat or something like that. Like they kind of failed in making it feel like an actual tournament, I would say.
The closest they get to it, which is completely throwaway, is putting the like other competitors' names in your objective chart as like the high scores to beat, right? Like that's kind of it. It's like, all right, beat 350,000 because that's Gary's high score.
But if you don't, you can still win that round. So it's well, what's
and Gary still loses.
Yeah,
it's it is very throwaway in that regard. And yeah, I agree. Like if you're gonna tip your toe in that water, like it didn't need it. It did not need it. Like it didn't add anything. It didn't really detract either, which I guess is good. Like I didn't feel like, oh damn, it's another one of these. It's just like, all right, I guess I'm gonna poke around in the locker room until I get bored, and then I'm just gonna leave.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the good thing here is that it never forces you into this walk-in simulator sequence that lasts 15 minutes. Like you could just walk to the door and leave instantly, or you can like read a newspaper article or something like this. And you know, it is too bad because actually in those first couple ones, I was intrigued by the world. I wanted to. There was like this controversy because this is a very dangerous sport and people are against it, but this corporation wants to keep doing it and make it even more deadly than ever. But like, I don't know. Like it just never really went anywhere with that. That was intriguing to me. There's a couple like points where there's a radio, so you can hear kind of a commentator talking about the upcoming round and stuff like that. But yeah, I think that's a part of the game that is kind of unfortunately a bit weaker. So
yeah,
we're shouting out at least.
It exists.
Yeah, I feel like we've talked about most of the things on my notes here. I just maybe want to hammer down once again a bit on the movement side of things and maybe the more Tony Hawk-ish part of it, because we've talked a lot about what feels like the Doom, and I think where this game succeeds. Okay, so last week we reviewed Curse to Golf. Have you heard of this one, Dante? Any interest?
I have not.
Okay, so this is
it's a golfing
roguelike indie that came out last week, and I talked about in our review how it's a decent golf game. It's kind of a weak roguelike, but the two together didn't really elevate it beyond that. It feels like two very separate parts of the game.
Right.
Whereas you cannot separate the combat from the movement in this game. Like everything is working and meshing really well together. And I think converse to Curse to Golf, like adding these two genres together actually works fucking perfectly because they're both very much about momentum and keeping combos going and like being very accurate but still arcadey at the same time. So taking these things actually works like super well together. And so to talk about the Tony Hawk-y part of it, you do have like a shit ton of different tricks you can do. Like I think there's
like
maybe 20 different grabs or something like that, maybe like 20 different grinds. Maybe that's a little bit more than you actually have. Now, one thing you could say is there's maybe not a big incentive to use different ones. Like you can, I guess I feel like maybe often I'm spamming the same grab or something, and I'm not feeling like, oh, I'm getting significantly less ammo for doing that. I don't know if it actually does detract if you use the same thing over and over. I guess the only way that you're ever really incentivized to use certain tricks is for the challenges where it's like, do the 50-50 grind and kill an enemy with a shotgun, or do this grab through the trick token, whatever that thing is called.
Is that what that fucking thing is? I'm so dumb. I've collected this in every round and it never pops. What do I have to do? Yeah, I just literally
the
go
blue
through
one
it
is
every time.
You do that specific trick through it. So that'll help you give you 4 more challenges right there.
4 points in no time. God, I literally was like, I keep
easy usually.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I just was collecting it over and over again. I'm not reading the list hard enough, and I just want to like I said, I'm just defending myself. I feel like I go on fight or flight mode. I
have to focus so much to actually read the text because it's so small that I'm like downloading it twice as hard. Because I'm like, what is this fucking line? I have to like interpret it. It's like a puzzle game too somehow.
I'm just like glancing at it, moving on, and then I'm like, oh fuck, rockets! Like, and that's just my whole thought process. I do like. I feel like it feels a lot like a really early Tony Hawk game. Like I feel like as the Tony Hawk series kind of progressed, there was just kind of like more of a smooth flow to the way that game like moves. And this still feels like kind of stilted in your tricks. It's like lock into grab, turn. You know what I mean? Like instead of this kind of like smooth animation. So like I feel like it does like while like I think those combined feel really, really cool. And maybe that is almost a limitation of it. Like they want to make sure that you feel like it's not, I don't know. I don't feel like the animation would change much for me, honestly. I do feel like there's this kind of stickiness to this game. Like it's very, it's stilted a little bit, for lack of a better term. And that was kind of like, one of like, I have little tiny gripes with this game, and none of them I think are amounting to anything serious. And like I think the sum of its parts is still like really solid. If you like a score attack game, or if you like a Tony Hawk, I think Tony Hawk more than the shooter side. I think the shooter side is kind of like a cool addition and like a really nice like fun mashup. But I think it's DNA is more in the Tony Hawk side of things, or like the X Games that came out on like the original PlayStation. I feel like if you like those and you like that score attack like style of games, you're gonna eat it up. Like it's like I think I'm being kind of a little negative when I'm just kind of explaining my gripes, but I still think I'll finish it if I can now that I can maybe move my way through some of these, but knowing that I can get like these trick tokens, and I just need to pay a little bit more attention to what it's asking me, because in my head I was like, I completed the level.
Right.
Let me move free. On. Just let me free. Because the first 2 times through the mall, I just died. Like I couldn't even I wasn't even getting past it. So I was like that accomplishment, and then realizing, oh, by the way, you didn't accomplish anything, bud. Kind of like, I don't know. It's a little gut punch for me.
That's too bad. A couple other things on that part of the game. There's the trick token, which we talked about. There's one of those on each level, and you do a certain trick through that, and boom, you get a challenge there. But then there's also those combo tokens, and I think those are pretty cool the way that's included in there, where that combo meter is going up every time you kill an enemy, but then it also goes up when you hit that. And I think that's cool because most of the levels have a challenge, or at least the first few, where it's like, okay, get a 5 times combo, 10 times 15, 20. When you get up to those numbers, like, okay, this is getting a lot harder. And I think it's cool, like, strategizing, not exactly the perfect line, but just like, okay, I know where this trick token is. I'm going to keep it there, or this combo token, I should say. I'm going to keep it there, save it for a rainy day when I'm not near an enemy or I'm out of ammo or something like that. So I think it's cool that it's kind of like that collectible, like the tapes that you mentioned in Tony Hawk. Then it's also included in the gameplay in a way to keep
like
your
adding
combo
to your
up.
score.
Yeah, so I think it's cool that it's kind of a 2-for-1 sort of mechanic there. And maybe the one thing that was unintuitive for me in the movement is I guess not the acid drop is when you like jump down into a half pipe, right? Or
Yeah,
quarter
it's
pipe.
like it has a not an invert, but it like keeps you on the track of the
Right.
pipe. Whereas like if you just launch off of, like, you can hold forward going off of some of those, and you'll just literally go off of the coping, which is for people who are not familiar with skateboarding or anything. That's the metal bar that's at the top of a
I
ramp.
didn't know that word, actually. That's fun.
There you go. It's a free one for you.
It's a free one. I gotta pay for the next.
Yeah, for sure.
Trick
This training is not cheap. No, so
it's a trade.
yeah.
I told you about the trick token. You told me about a
Yeah,
coping.
there we go.
Yeah.
We're even. I'm kidding. So yeah, you can like, if you just hold forward, you like gap over the coping. But if you just like go up to the edge and jump, or you just go up to the edge and let go, you'll go up and down it. But you can also just hold down RB or R1, and it'll like stick you to that ramp.
That's the one. Yeah, that was the one thing that was a bit tricky for me, is when I'm trying to just not go straight up the quarter pipe, but I'm trying to like jump beyond it. And there's like, you can do it if you just hold the button. I think it's the L1. You just fly off at a low angle, and then if you do a jump at the right time, like, you're supposed to go like higher up. But that never felt right for me. I could like never really get where I wanted to go with that. I was like, okay, I want to do this, so I land on this higher platform, and maybe it's near a combo token or whatever it is, or get that HP. But I could like never get that part down. So I ended up just essentially skipping that mechanic. I would just plan my routes accordingly. So it was never really an issue, but I guess it's just the one thing that I would have liked to include that in my toolkit, and maybe I'll get better at it. Now that I'm kind of mastering, quote unquote, some of the other mechanics, maybe I can focus on that a bit more. And I think that's something too, like the challenges don't really force you to learn that. Like I mentioned earlier, how I like the challenge us because it teaches you, okay, to counter this enemy, try this thing out. And it's not really explicitly tutorializing you to do that, but it's just like, once you've done, you're like, oh, that feels really good. I'm going to
do this forever.
But yeah, I felt like it wasn't there. There's never really a challenge that I can remember that was teaching me to do that. And maybe it's one of those things where I never got stuck on like having to go back and do challenges. So maybe there's a couple that are that, and I just never really acknowledged them because I didn't need to. So maybe when I'm going back through the levels, I'll discover some of those things.
I guess it does kind of, I hadn't thought about why they did it this way compared to like some of other like skateboarding or rollerblading games. The right stick usually would be the thing you would use to do like a backflip or a front flip or like a side flip or something like that, and you're using that to aim, right? So like, yeah. The aiming mechanic's kind of interesting too. We didn't talk about that at all. It's like this, it's like half lock on. Like once you kind of like, you hold the trigger in and you're looking at something, it has this like square, and it'll can stay locked onto that character until you see another one, and then, or like a closer enemy. Like Dylan said, they don't move around, so usually they're kind of well spaced out that you don't have to worry. Like the aiming seems fine to me. Like I never have issues with the aiming, but you don't have to worry about it so much if you're like really focusing on like doing a flip or something like that in the same time. I also wish the dodges were a trick. They look like a trick. They look like a trick too much. Like I always do a dodge. I got to a point where I was accidentally dodging, thinking I was going to do something, and I was like, "Wait, fuck! I just used my dodge on accident." Again.
Yeah, it's funny. There's in Tony Hawk, you know, you'd land with what was it called? Is it called a vert? What is it called when you like spin your board around?
A revert. Yeah.
A revert. Yeah. You'd like do a revert into a manual. Like this game doesn't have a manual or a revert or something like that, but I'd find sometimes where like an enemy threw a mine down, like right where I'm about to land, and I would like kind of do that dodge, and it would feel kind of like doing a revert in a way, but it doesn't. It doesn't like give you ammo or anything like that. So I see.
It would have been cool if they built it into the mechanics a little further outside of just like getting out of the way of a bullet, which feels good when you do it. I think if
you get a perfect dodge with
those feel good.
If you get a perfect dodge, I think it gives you something, right?
I don't know
if it. I
feel like it should.
To check on that.
Yeah, I feel like it should. It definitely, there is a difference between like the snipers will have red lines coming at you, and when like they're targeting lines, and they will change color. They'll go gray, white, right? I think, or gray is you got hit by it, and then white it will switch to if you can just like right when you're supposed to dodge it.
Okay.
It feels really, really good. Like I do think the dodging mechanic when it comes to actually like getting out of the way of enemies is pretty slick. How they do kind of have a scale of how good your dodge was. Like it makes you a little more invested in doing it properly, or doing it kind of at the last second so you can get a little bonus. But I don't know what the bonus is. I'm with you. I don't know if I was actually getting anything extra, or if it was just to feel good.
Yeah, and my last thing maybe on the aiming was like with the pistol on specifically the enemies with the bats. I often like I'll never zoom in on those guys because you can kill them quick enough. But I don't know if this is a pro or con, just worth mentioning. I guess that I feel like I'm always instead zooming in, which slows time down to do things.
Yeah,
so
same.
I don't feel like it's killing the momentum of the game, but sometimes I'm like, man, when I actually am pistol killing one of these weak enemies, it's like, damn, I'm fucking zooming, and I'm not really doing that a whole lot, especially with the grenade launcher, and I'd say the weapon after as well. Like, I don't think, like, can you like even not shoot the grenade launcher if you're not zoomed in? I could be wrong on that, but
I don't know. I always zoom in.
And with the shotgun, like you're not gonna be able to do the
it goes into like
shot.
Max pain time. Yeah, you can't do the slugshot, and that's I'm using the shotgun most of the time, so that's why I was always zooming in, because you do get that kind of like that like rhythm game piece to it, which I think is, I don't know, it adds a fun layer. The after you get the shotgun, I feel like the guns are boring. Like not all the guns, just the two pistols that you use. I found those to be boring in comparison to the shotgun, so I just always use the shotgun.
Yeah. I do kind of agree with that, especially when you get the all four. I feel like it's like a weapon triangle that I'm using, and the only time I'm whipping out the pistol at that point is when an enemy has like 10% of their health left, and I just want to quickly finish them off. I think maybe part of the idea too is that it's like, okay, I'm going to attack this enemy with my shotgun, and then after that I can't shoot my shotgun again, but I could still do 2 pistol shots. So you're supposed to quickly switch and do that, and sometimes I will do that. I think particularly there's maybe an enemy type that you're going to encounter in a level or two that I'm using the grenade launcher, as I mentioned earlier, shooting the grenade launcher and then switching to my pistols and like shooting them at the same time. So I think there's a couple enemies that
I found a reason to use them, right? Like it was the ones with the yellow shield that pop
the shield
up,
guys,
right? Like like I said, if you use an entire clip on them, they don't go into the shield form at all. So I was like, oh, this is a reason now that to go back to this, but once again, it doesn't explicitly tell you. And now that I figured it out, I was like, I'm going to utilize this from now on, because this is the only way I can like dependably kill these guys. Otherwise I'm half killing them and then screwing off and doing something else.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I think each of the weapons on their own aren't amazing, but for me, there's so much going on at any given time that like I don't even notice if like these guns aren't that interesting. Like they're just my brain is crunching so many numbers that I'm totally okay.
It does ask a lot. It does ask a lot. It's like, all right, this is how you do flips. This is how you do backflips, and you want to combine all of these things, slow down time and shoot something all at the same time. It is. You're doing a little bit of like finger and mental gymnastics every time you shoot something, but it ends up, like I said, getting a really nice flow state. And when you're in the game does feel like absolutely excellent. There was a moment where I got to like a 19 times combo, and I was like, this rocks. Like I was having a blast. And then, but the second, whenever I'm like at like a 4 or a 5, I'm getting shot and stuff like that, I feel like crap. And I'm just like, all right,
that's
beating
fair.
me up.
Yeah, I mean, for me too, a highlight was that level that I said it like took me probably at least 15 attempts. And after I'd done that, I'm like, okay, I want to play this game for another like 10, 15 minutes, but I don't want to start the next level and like put myself in that right now. I need to come back tomorrow. And so I went back to the first level and just absolutely destroyed it. Like didn't get hit maybe like once. I just got that combo meter the whole way, cleared all the challenges in one run. And like that felt fucking amazing to go back and be like, man, I really have gotten a lot better at this game. It's been so gradual that I haven't really noticed, but just grinding this one level over and over again,
15 times,
got my skills up there to like going back to these old levels. It's like, damn, that felt really good. Especially now, once again, with the new game plus, like, okay, now it's the first level again, but now all the enemy types are available here. They're going to do more damage and stuff like that. So once again, I don't know if I'm going to do that whole thing. But yeah, I don't know if I feel like the game was too short. I think I maybe could have used one more level of the tournament, like another set of 4 levels or something like that. But who knows? Maybe I'll find replaying in the new game plus is actually very enjoyable, and I'm kind of familiar with this map, but now it's different. Yeah, so we'll see how that goes.
Hopefully the challenges are all new as well.
I don't think
right?
there's many challenges. I think there's just like 3 in the New Game Plus, it seems like, for each level. So it's like get this certain score, or I guess get like certain combo meter. I forget exactly what it was, but they're more high score chasing things instead of like do this trick token. Like I think they took that kind of stuff out of it. So
yeah, they should have added a little bit more. They should have added like, I don't know, special trick tokens where you have to do a specific trick through them, or like, I don't know, grind 50 feet in the level, like stuff like that. You know what I mean?
And,
just
maybe the
or bring stuff from other levels that have specific objectives and just put them, like, remix them.
Yeah, I mean that could be possible. Like I said, I'm only on the second one of the New Game Plus, so far they haven't. So I would assume they don't. But yeah, I think I've kind of covered everything on my side of the notes here. Anything else from you, Dante?
I don't think so. Like, lukewarm at the end of the day on it. Like, I feel like I definitely can like heat up a little bit if I as I get into some of the later levels. I'm definitely curious to at least get to the one that you were bashing your head up against and see how that one treats me. Because that if you, someone who is having lots of success with the game, had a lot of trouble with that level, I probably will find it unbeatable. So I'm definitely curious to at least get there and kind of see how I feel differently about it.
It has that beautiful thing though of when I did beat that level, I was like, oh fuck yeah, I was like pumped.
No, that's the best. That's the best.
So good. The worst thing was when you're bashing your head against something, you finally do it. You're like, okay, now I'm done with that. I can move on to the next thing that I hate. So thankfully,
I'm usually here for a challenge too. I'm surprised. I kind of got like so demoralized. It's rare for me. Like I usually like prefer something to be more difficult than less, right? Like this one, I was just like, just let me in. I was like that Eric Andre gif. I was like just pulling at the gate of the White House trying to like get to the next level.
Yeah, I guess that's maybe a good like cautionary tale or advice for people who haven't played the game yet, is like pay attention to the challenges.
Definitely.
Because they're not optional. Like you have to do them. And that is on the menu, but anyway,
I know it was there too. It keeps saying 4 more. And I'm just like, I know.
Taunting you.
Don't want to do the 4 that you left me with.
Yeah, I hear you. Okay, that's Rollerdrome. I'm really curious to see where my thoughts are on this game by the end of the year, just because, like I said, my interest kept getting higher and higher, and then as soon as it was peaking, the game just kind of ended, and I felt like I maybe wanted a bit more. So I don't know how I'll feel about that in 2 months from now. I feel like, I actually wanted more. If I'm like, you know what, it was short and sweet, and I'm happy to move on to the next thing. But I also think too, I'm a bit in a state right now where like this summer, like I've played so many games, and this is the last like review that I'm doing for until I think like late September is the next like actual new game I'm picking up. So I'm just gonna be like finishing things up, maybe hitting the backlog a little. I gotta start the God of War for that retro. So I think this is my like a bit of a swan song for my little my summer review period. So kind of nice to have a bit of a break here. This is a good one to end it on.
Good indie season over the summer this year, I'd say.
Definitely.
Definitely.
First the Golf, Cult of Lambs, Stray.
Yep. Played.
I'm sure there's a few in there.
Yeah, I was going to say that one's. I was going to say The Quarry, but that wasn't an indie game by any means. No. But yeah, between Stray and Cult of Lamb and then this, I think this was a good little like 3 game run for me at the very least. And I'm sure there's a dozen other incredible ones that we just didn't even know existed.
Yeah. Okay, Dante, it was great to have you back on.
Thanks for having me.
We've talked about some other podcasts that you'd be probably joining in on the fall, so I'm sure we'll see your face a few more times there.
Look forward to it.
Thank you so much for joining me, and we'll see you guys next week, everyone. Have a good one. Bye.